It's the amazing Rico Borgna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Oh, God, that sucked. Let's face it. I don't know if we're in Panic City yet, but that was pound for pound a disastrous three-game series against a very mediocre, let's be honest, a very mediocre Tampa Bay Rays team. There's a lot of things to complain about. There's a lot of things to bitch about. And I may surprise you, but can I tell you the number one thing that annoyed me as the Mets got swept by the Tampa Bay Rays? The number one thing that annoyed me is there's been one constant over the last couple of years, one thing that you can rely on. The one security blanket that we have as Met fans is that this closer will come into a game and he will not be the guy from 2019. He won't be Armando Benitez. He won't be Braden Looper. He won't be that typical, rip your heart out Met closer. And what I give Edwin Diaz a lot of credit for is that he blew saves in 2022. He did. He wasn't perfect. Now, the last save he blew in 2022, I think, was in May, that game against San Francisco. But it seems like when he has blown saves over the last couple of years, they haven't been that complete kick in the balls moment like we had back in 2019. This game on Sunday afternoon, this blown save on every level, from the importance of the game, from he's 1 out away, he's 1 strike away, he's facing a guy who is hitting 140 this season in Randy Arozarena. For him to give up a home run on a 3-2 pitch was an absolute backbreaker. I mean, it was an absolute killer. So trust me, I'm not exonerating Jeff McNeil, who has sucked. I'm not exonerating Pete Alonzo, who continues to be a shell of his former self. And we'll get to all that. We'll get to all of it. I'm not exonerating the fact that nobody can throw a guy out at second or third base. And by the way, that's not all on Omar Narvaez and Tomas Nido. In fact, most of it is on this freaking pitching staff who can't hold me on. So we'll get to all of it. But to me, on Sunday afternoon, after the Mets have had a brutal series, they have really not played well since they won the first 2 games in Los Angeles. They just needed a victory. And this victory on Sunday, if they got it, would have followed a lot of their recent victories. It would have fit that whole, all right, we survived. It's not great. We're not playing well. But boy, they avoided a complete unmitigated disaster. That's what most of these wins lately have been. It's what we said about the finale against the Chicago Cubs. It's what we said in the finale against the St. Louis Cardinals. It's what we said in the finale against the Giants. Basically, the Mets have been playing salvage ball over the last couple of weeks. And all they needed from this closer was 1 more strike, 1 more out. And they were going to escape this ugly, weird game. They were going to win 5-4. The bullpen was going to make it hold up after Luis Severino couldn't throw a damn strike, after the Met offense left a small village on base, and Edwin Diaz kicked us all in the nads. That's the truth. That's the reality. Now, is he their biggest issue? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm telling you is, emotionally as a fan, that's the thing that sucked the most. That the guy we trust, the guy we rely on, the guy who has been nearly perfect for a couple of years, really spit the bit in a big spot. Now, he didn't blow it completely in the 9th inning, because even after he gave up a base hit to Ahmed Rosario, who promptly steals second base without a goddamn problem, Diaz is at least able to get that last out. But we all knew the same thing after Diaz gave up that home run to Randy Arozarena. The Mets were inevitably going to lose this game. There was not a doubt in my mind. Like, there was one way the Mets were going to win on Sunday afternoon. And I'll walk you to the exact scenario in the exact moment. When they were given the break in the 10th inning, because Brandon Nimmo hits a comebacker, it bounces off of the pitcher. It is fielded, I guess it was by the shortstop, Caballero. I think it was him. He throws to first base, and by the grace of God, Yandy Diaz drops the ball. Because that's what happened. He literally dropped the ball at first base, and they got it right because they called it an error. Initially, it was a base hit. It was not a base hit. It was the first baseman dropping a ball, because the Rays are not any good, as I think we've seen over these last 3 days. The problem is the Mets were worse. But after Yandy Diaz gives the Mets the gift of from the gods of handing them the Manfred run, because when you're on the road in an extra inning game, at the bare minimum, you got to score that dopey Manfred run. If you don't, I mean, you're dead. Let's be honest. Gary Cohen tried to describe it eloquently on the broadcast. He basically said he tried to curse and then he didn't. I forget how he phrased it, but basically, you're reffed. I think is what Gary was saying. And so the Mets are on the verge of not scoring a run because Brett Beatty strikes out, because Tomas Nido flies out. Because, and really, I was pissed at Beatty. Can you advance him to third base? Like, the worst case scenario should be a weak ground ball to second base. At least you move Bader, who's the Manfred runner, to third base. He doesn't even do that. So when Tomas Nido makes decent contact, it turns out to not even matter. To a small degree, it ended up mattering because it advanced the runner to third base. The Mets were able to get a run on an error. But after Marte drew the walk, and the Mets are set up with 2 on and 2 out, yet another opportunity with guys on base, which they had all afternoon against Tampa Bay. I looked at Francisco Lindor, who got off to a very good start in this game. He hits the home run to set the tone in the first inning. He lined out his next at-bat. He had a base hit his third at-bat. It was a good day for Lindor. But I looked at this at-bat with Lindor and said, he's got to come through. 1 run ain't going to be enough. Not with Jake Diekman coming in. And when Lindor flied out meekly to left field, the handwriting was on the wall that this was going to be an absolutely brutal loss. Now, here's my issue with Jake Diekman. My issue with Jake Diekman is not even the walk that he issued to Ben Rortvedt. My issue with Jake Diekman is not even the stolen base that was given up to Caballero, who ran on the 3-2 pitch. How many stolen bases did Tampa Bay have in this game? Hold on, let me just count this up just so I have this right so we can all hear about it again. So Caballero stole a base in the third. That's number 1. Richie Palacio stole a base in the fourth. That's number 2. Arozarena stole a base in the fourth. That's number 3. We've got 2 stolen bases by Caballero in the seventh. That gets you to 5. Then you've got Rosario stealing a base in the ninth. That's 6. And then you've got Caballero doing again in the 10th. That's 7. They allowed 7 freaking stolen bases in this game. But that wasn't my biggest issue with Jake Diekman. Giving up a stolen base, that's just Met culture in 2024. My biggest issue, and I was saying this out loud, I was watching this game with my dad, he is ahead of this Johnny DeLuca 0-2. And I say to my dad, can he bury ball in the dirt here and make this guy chase? Even Darling saying it on the broadcast, like DeLuca will swing at anything. So Diekman leaves a changeup right freaking there, and DeLuca fouls it off. And now I'm getting even more pissed. I'm like, Dad, can he bury a freaking pitch? You're ahead of this guy 0-2. He swings at everything. He did it again, and DeLuca fouls it off. And I'm like, can this schmuck not throw a pitch near the freaking strike zone when you're ahead of the count 0-2? You knew it was going to end bad. There's first and third and nobody out. You can't give up any kind of contact. Like, you literally need to strike this son of a bitch out. Or maybe you get a pop-up. I don't know. And again, he throws an 0-2 pitch right there. Like, it's weird the things that piss me off the most, but I think that thing pissed me off maybe more than anything. I mean, what are you doing? Throw one in the... This guy's swinging at everything. And you're leaving it right there for him to crush one to left center field. And then Harrison Bader pretends like he's Superman flying through the sky. Bases clearing triple. Good night, go home. Mets lose. And that's not the only reason the Mets lost. There are many reasons why the Mets lost. And look, he could bury a few in the dirt. He's still giving up the lead. Like, that is inevitably happening. But that drove me nuts at the end of this game. You're ahead 0-2. Understand that. But the other thing about Sunday that was a killer, look, the offense showed a pulse in this series. The offense especially showed a pulse in the first game of this series when they put up 8 runs. But what the Met offense did consistently this weekend in Tampa was get off to good starts, which they hadn't really done all year, and then completely disappear in the final few innings of this game. When you look at Sunday, they scored 2 runs in the first inning on the Lindor home run. But every other time they scored runs, they missed out on opportunities to score more. Go to the third inning when they're down 3-2. In the third inning, they are set up with a bases loaded, nobody out spot, and they've got Lindor, Alonzo, DJ, and Mcneel coming up. At the bare minimum, with the bases loaded and nobody out, and the heart of the order coming up, you got to score 2 or 3 runs. You have to. You not only have to tie the game, you have to take the lead. Lindor, not going to kill him. Hit a line drive right at the shortstop. Nothing you could do about it. It was good hard contact. Plus, he had a home run 2 innings earlier. So, can't kill Lindor. But then you got Pete. Pete, I love you, Pete. And this freaking beard is growing, and it's disgusting, and I want to get rid of it. And this hair is growing, and it's disgusting, and I want to get rid of it. And it's all there because I'm loyally, I don't know what I'm doing, actually. I was going to say I'm loyal to you. Whatever. I'm an idiot who went on the radio and said, I won't shave until you're extended because I want you to be taken care of. Well, now it's your turn to take care of me and take care of all of us. And that is wake up. And of all the at-bats that Pete had, and he had some doozies today on Sunday, bases loaded, 1 out. Pete, hit the ball to the freaking warning track. And what's so concerning about Alonzo's slump is that he's not hitting into bad luck. It's not one of those things where you could say, you know what, they're going to fall eventually. He's not hitting into bad luck. He's flailing at pitches low in the zone. He's making weak contact. He's striking out a lot. And in that spot, with the bases loaded and 1 out, Pete, hit the ball to the outfield. He falls behind in the count, and he pops one up to second base. And the only reason that inning wasn't the complete disaster that it was set up to be, it was just a minor disaster, was because to DJ Stewart's credit, he drew a walk. And at least they were able to tie the game. But I would still argue the inning was a disaster. Because, again, when you have bases loaded, nobody out, you better score. When you have bases loaded, nobody out, and your best hitters are coming up, you have to score multiple times. And think about it. After that, Mets didn't do much offensively. But the other killer was Jeff McNeil. I am now, with Pete Alonzo, he is slumping. And I'll criticize him like I just did. And we'll talk about the lack of hard contact he's had. I believe Pete Alonzo will get hot. I do. There isn't enough of a track record to think Alonzo's just going to get lost and he's going to hit, 190 for the season and hit 25 home runs. Look, he may not hit for a high batting average, and I hope the average will dip higher and closer to 260 than 220. And right now where is it at now? 205, something like that. But I do believe that Pete will get hot because even last year, in a year in which his batting average wasn't high, he still had a decently productive season and got hot. So I have faith in Pete Alonzo. You know who I'm losing faith in? We all should be losing faith in him. And that's Jeff McNeil. Because this is no longer just a slump. Pete's slumping. Jeff McNeil has sucked now for over a year. That's the reality. I got this stat sent to me in my Mets text chat. Let me read it to you. And this is from at NYM Nathan. So good job by him if he did the research. In Jeff McNeil's last 188 games, so that is a year plus, he is hitting 265 with an on-base percentage of 330 and a slug of 368. I'll do the math for you. That's an OPS of 698. He's hit 11 home runs. Dude, that sucks. That is not worthy of being an everyday player, let alone one of the core players you rely on. So Jeff McNeil comes up, bases loaded, 2 out. The Met offense has been given a new lease on life because of DJ Stewart's walk, and he strikes out meekly. So I am concerned. Ring the bell. Ring the effing bell. I am concerned about Jeff McNeil. I can no longer sit back the way I have about Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonzo on the Fan with Aaron Judge and say, don't worry, it's early. Calm down. Look at the back of the baseball card. The problem with Jeff McNeil is I am looking at the back of the baseball card. I mean, last year, he was terrible. And the expectation was he'll be closer to the guy who won the batting title in 22 than the guy who was terrible in 23. And so far, it's been a continuation. So they failed to do anything there. Then in the 4th inning, when they actually do score 2 runs, again, given to them by Tampa Bay's inept defense, when Jose Siri drops a ball in center field, They get a clutch hit by Omar Narvaez, good for him. They get a comebacking clutch hit by Brandon Nimmo, good for him. And then what? Think about that. And then what? At that point, the Mets have a 5-4 lead, but they've got to expand on it. And what happens? Marte flies out. Lindor singles, run doesn't score. And then here comes Pete with the bases loaded. Another moment for Pete Alonzo to get that one hit to get him going. I give him this. It's one of the rare times he actually hit the ball hard. But he hit it right at the third baseman, Isaac Paredes. And he turned a 5-4-3 double play. And after that, the Met bats did nothing. They had a great opportunity in the 8th inning. Marte grounds out. They had a great opportunity in the 9th inning. Bader pops out. They given the opportunity in the 10th we talked about at the top of the pod. Lindor flies out. So it's not one thing, obviously. But the Mets were in position, despite all of that, to win this game. They were in position to win this game, despite the fact that Luis Severino couldn't throw a strike. And I give Luis a lot of credit. I actually thought, this is my one minor positive from the Sunday game. I thought Severino did a great job battling, because there are days in which you just don't have it. There are days in which you don't have your command. And clearly from jump, when Severino walked Yandy Diaz to lead off the game, he did not have great command. But what did he do? He got out of a second and third one-out jam in the first inning with back-to-back strikeouts. He got out of the second inning after it could have been worse when he gave up the 3 runs that he gave up. He got out of the third inning, and it could have been worse. He was actually bailed out by a tremendous play by Starling Marte. He got out of the 4th inning in which he walked back-to-back guys and then pitched this really clean, efficient 1-2-3 5th inning. And 5 innings, 4 runs, 6 walks is not good. I'm not telling you it's good, but I give him credit in that he took the shit sandwich of having nothing today and was at least able to give him 5 innings. Now compare that to what Jose Quintana did on Friday. Compare it to that. Because Jose Quintana basically lit that game on fire by getting knocked out in the 3rd inning and giving up 10 base hits, in which all of a sudden they got to go to the bullpen in the 3rd inning, which causes 2 guys to get sent down. So sometimes you look for minor positives. I thought Severino showing some gumption, showing some guts, and getting through 5 innings was a positive. And look, the rest of the Met bullpen did a good job. Jorge Lopez got through the 6th. Reed Garrett got through the 7th. We even saw something in the 7th inning. It's like a unicorn. You never, ever see this. You may have missed it. But the New York Mets threw a guy out trying to steal. What a freaking concept. I mean, it was a miracle. I almost fell out of my chair when I saw Tomas Nido deliver a strike to Jeff McNeil. And it was crazy because Ahmed Rosario was out by a country mile. But when you see a New York Met, and I don't want to say a catcher throw a guy out because it's not all on the catching. It really isn't. But when you actually see them throw out a base stealer, it's like sighting Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. Like you got to tell your kids about it. I can't believe I saw Santa. Well, I can't believe Tomas Nido and the New York Mets threw a guy out at second base. Of all the things that happened in Sunday's game, and we'll get to the other games in this series, plus a lot of emails. The email exploded as the Mets were losing this game. So there's a lot of angry people that want their voices heard, and we will do our best to hear from those angry people. But when bad crap happens, and bad crap has happened a lot over the last couple of days and the last couple of weeks, what's this team's record since winning the first 2 games in LA? They lose the finale. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Giants, so that's 1-3. They lose 2 out of 3 to St. Louis, so that's 2-5. Then they split, so they're 4-7. Then they're 5-9. Did I do my math right? They've lost 9 out of 14 games, whatever it is, 5-9 in their last 15 games, something like that. But you look at bad crap and you say, what's bad and it's not going to change, so I'm concerned about that. And what's bad, but you know what? Will be better. I'm not overly concerned about this. So in the pool of I'm not overly concerned would be, hey, Jose Quintana had a terrible start. I think he'll be okay. Jose Quintana has a track record. I just wish that his bad starts weren't as non-competitive as Friday. I think he'll be okay. I'm still overall encouraged by what Luis Severino has done this season. I still believe Pete Alonzo will get hot, as we talked about. I do not believe he's going to have a season where he hits 27 home runs and hits 207. That's just me. So I'm not overly concerned about him. You're already starting to see Brandon Nimmo get hot. I do think JD Martinez at some point will get hot. I do think Edwin Diaz overall will be fine. Am I ringing the concern bells about Edwin Diaz? He's had a couple of mediocre performances. The loss back on the homestand where he gave up the home run to now, not entirely. Look, I didn't expect him to be what he was in 2022, but I'm not overly concerned that he's just going to collapse and we're seeing 2019 Edwin Diaz. So those are the things I put in the bucket of, hey, this sucks, but it'll be fine. In terms of the bucket of concern, I'm concerned about Jeff McNeil, as I pointed out. And I am damn concerned that this pitching staff can't hold anybody on base. Like, this stretch where the Mets can't throw a base runner out is not a fluke. It's not an anomaly. Sometimes you don't know when you don't see something every day. You see a stat and you're like, oh, that's crazy. Wow, they can't throw anybody out. And if you're not watching, you may wonder why. Watching the Mets, it's not close. It's not as if this is bad luck. It's not as if there's a lot of bang-bang plays and they're not getting calls. They have a pitching staff as a whole, and Jeremy Hefner better figure it out. Look, this pitching lab has been wonderful. Reed Garrett looks like a top-notch reliever. I get it. Adam Ottavino, up until Saturday, has had a wonderful season. I get it. This bullpen has been the strength of the team, and it's awesome. They clearly, it looks like they fixed Luis Severino. That's fantastic. They got to fix this crap. Every single cannot turn into a double. It can't happen. It can't happen when you're not that good. Like, the Met pitching has been, honestly, they've been better than what they should be. They've overachieved. They're not that good. They were never going to be the strength of the team. And you can't put yourself in a position in which a guy is standing on second base every time. So I don't have the answer to it, but it better be fixed and it better happen soon. And it's on the pitching staff. Most of these stolen bases are not on Nito. They're not on Narvaez. They weren't on Alvarez when he was here. They are on this staff that are letting guys take massive jumps on them on a routine basis.
And the only reason why I know there was an issue, the Nito did throw somebody out, like you said, in this game. The only reason why they even got him out was because there was a misplay with the batter. He didn't swing the bat. He didn't make the hit. It was supposed to be a hit and run. So it's not even like, yeah, we looked at it like, wow, he actually got our base runner out. It's because they messed up, not the pitcher.
Yeah.
It's incredible how bad it actually is.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, he looked back as if it was a missed hit and run. So one of the 3 times they've thrown a guy out was a mistake by a Rays team that, let's be honest, made a lot of mistakes this weekend. That's the other thing. The Rays didn't play great baseball. The Mets played worse. And at the bare minimum, should have won a game in this series. But they got to fix it. Like, when you talk about things to be concerned about, and look, here's the other thing. It is now Cinco de Mayo. No, Cinco de Fivo. No, that's a segment on the show. It's Cinco de Mayo. We are no longer playing this April game anymore. And I consider myself like a rather patient baseball fan. I like to say it's early. Look at the back of the baseball card, give guys time. And I do it with a lot of scenarios. I've done it with Lindor this year. Like I mentioned, with Judge in terms of the Yankees. I even feel that way about Pete Alonzo. But there are certain things when you get to May where it's like, all right, now I'm starting to think this is a thing. And not being able to throw out base runners is a thing. And it's worse when you don't have a pitching staff that is top of the line where you can overcome these mistakes. It's like walking guys. And that's the other thing. This staff walks way too many guys. Look, Nolan Ryan can get away with walking the bases loaded because that Texan sumbitch would strike out the next 3 guys. The Mets aren't good enough to do that. Now, let me get to some of your emails concerning Sunday's game, and we'll go back and look at the rest of this series. Jack Keene writes, the Holy Trinity. This was the holy trinity of Mets pain, straight out of the textbook. Great offense in game one, pitching is terrible. Great pitching in game two, no offense. Then a blown save and a crew walk-off in extras. Starting to feel pretty down on this team. Couldn't have seen this run coming after the brilliant series in LA. Tough schedule coming up. We need to start putting complete performances together quickly. I'm really worried about Pete. He looks like he's pressing and starting to wish they traded Mcneel in the offseason. He's painful to watch. You know, the Pete Alonzo pressing argument. Here's my question about the Pete Alonzo pressing, because I said this on the last Rico. I can't get into a guy's head. I don't know why Pete Alonzo is struggling. It could be simply mechanics are out of whack and not he's pressing, he's in a contract year. My pushback to the pressing argument would be he got off to a good start. Like, it's not like the contract which is hanging over him was hanging over him in spring training, was hanging over him at the start of the year, and he actually got off to a halfway decent start. So you're telling me he wasn't pressing, he was feeling fine, and then all of a sudden in late April, it just started haunting him? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, what this reminds me of, and there was an excuse for this last time, was back last year when the Mets were going through their June swoon. Pete Alonzo was a big part of why he could not hit. But I think the calculation we all made was he rushed himself back after the wrist injury when Charlie Morton drilled him. It doesn't look like there's an injury, so what the hell is it? Hopefully he gets out of it soon because they need him. Speaking of Pete Alonzo, Brian Smith writes, Pete Alonzo is playing himself into a Fangraphs 4-year, $70 million contract. Oh, boy. All right. Brutal series, hell. Brutal 2 weeks. I'm quickly becoming incredibly annoyed with Alonzo's ineptitude, and I can guarantee you I'm not alone. This fantasy that the Mets fan base universally wants him back is not even remotely accurate. Can he be any more unclutch? In his defense, being juxtaposed against Soto on the other side of town isn't helping his case either. Evan said something on the last episode of the pod that I found very disappointing. Uh-oh. All right, Brian is very disappointed in me. Let's find out what it is and see if maybe he's right. After admitting that Pete Alonzo's been awful lately, you flippantly posed the question, does anyone care why he is struggling? Okay. I speak for everyone when I say, yes, Evan, Met fans really care why a player and potential free agent seeking a massive payday is struggling. We, the fans, are especially concerned when David Stearns is formulating the blueprint for the direction of this team moving forward. Most reasonable baseball fans would agree that paying a 30-year-old one-tool corner infielder with a declining skill set, OAA, sprint speed, exit velocity, who's currently 13th in FWAR among first basemen and sinking like a stone with leverage numbers struggling, is pressing to be an incredibly risky investment. Translation, the money could be better spent elsewhere. See Christian Walker, or alternatively, don't spend big on a first baseman like most teams. Again, also, I'd argue it's hypocritical of you to dismiss Alonzo's abject failures in clutch situations when you consistently killed Max Scherzer in 2022 for pitching poorly in 2 big games, Atlanta, San Diego, despite posting the best ERA of his first bout Hall of Fame career. Like Alonzo, Scherzer always gave maximum effort, but he attracted your ire, in my opinion, because you perceived him to be inept in big games, high leverage situations, in conjunction with him replacing your boy DeGrom. This idea was confirmed when you determined that potentially shaving your beard would be disloyal to Pete should he continue struggling. If that is in fact accurate, the polar bear should avoid your fiery tongue. It's a great email, and I will respond to everything he's saying. Also, Aaron Judge's historic walk here was the primary narrative in MLB for months, as well as your radio station. And I'd bet dollars to donuts, if Pete wasn't playing so poorly, we'd be regularly hearing comparisons between the two sluggers' platforms' seasons. And he sent me stats of, I guess this is Pete, in high leverage, low leverage, and medium leverage situations in 2024. Question for you. At what point does Pete play himself out of a future contract? I'm clearly looking to move on from Pete. I'd actively look to move him while he still has value, and Luis Arise shows that teams are willing to transact. All right. He goes on and on. Let me address a couple of things. First of all, to not caring why he's struggling. Yeah, I don't care why he struggles. He needs to perform. I think most Met fans would be on my side. Now, I think the argument Brian's making is that Pete Alonzo is an unclutch player, right? And so the reason he's struggling is that he is unclutch because he wants to prove his clutch argument point. And so that shows you shouldn't keep him. He's not clutch. It is tough to look at Pete Alonso's Met career, all of it, not just this season, not just last season, but all of it, and say that is a guy who never comes through in a big spot. It's not accurate. It's not. Like, you're getting on me for ripping Max Scherzer. Look, Max Scherzer was a hired gun. He was a Hall of Fame hired gun who's also a starting pitcher. And so when you look at the big starts he was paid to make against Atlanta and against San Diego, he came up small. And by the way, the following year, when they were playing big games, trying to get themselves back in a pennant race, he did the same damn thing. His Hall of Fame resume doesn't mean anything to us. What mattered to us was what he did here. Pete Alonso has been here a lot longer than Max Scherzer, was here a lot longer than Max Scherzer, and there are plenty of moments. Remember that home run against St. Louis? A big, big home run back in 2022? That was a big home run. Like, I could sit here and do this all day. So to act like he's not a clutch player, A, is not accurate, and B, to try to take this slump. And I admit he's playing like crap. It's not like I'm defending him right now. It's going to sound like I'm defending him right now. And say, it matters why he's slumping because it proves my point that he's not clutch. That is you trying to prove your narrative. And by the way, to Brian, I respect that you don't want to pay him. That's fine. I get your argument when you compare him to Christian Walker and other contracts, and you're projecting that you think he's going to sink as a baseball player. And by the way, if Pete has a bad year this year, and that average is similar to what it was a year ago, and his power numbers are down, and he takes kind of a step back defensively, you're going to look pretty right. But don't try to prove your narrative by it matters why he's slumping because you think he's slumping because he's pressing. We have no idea why he's slumping. And look, Pete said this after the game on Sunday. He's right about it. No one cares. We need performance. This is a performance business. He's got to go out and hit. Right now, he's not hitting. And look, even when it's an injury, sometimes it doesn't matter. Like, think about Beltran in his first year with the Mets in 2005. He had a bad year here because he wasn't healthy. Do you think anybody gave a damn? Nobody cared. It was just go out and perform. Now, let me get to a few positive things because, believe it or not, there are some positive things. Saturday night was Christian Scott night. When the Mets made that decision a couple days ago on Thursday to call up Christian Scott, I was surprised. I think most of us were surprised. It looked as if the Mets wanted to insert him to have a six-man rotation. Now it feels like Adrian Hauser is just becoming a bullpen arm. That's the way it feels. Adrian Hauser is going to be available out of the bullpen in the series against St. Louis. Then the Mets have an off day. And based on the way Christian Scott threw the ball on Saturday, he's getting another start. He's getting another handful of starts. There are so many awesome things about what Scott did on Saturday. But let's start with the balls. Let's start with the guts. Here is a guy making his major league debut. He only made a handful of starts at AAA. In fact, he made 5 of them. 5 starts at AAA. And here he is in a major league stadium against a major league lineup, making his major league debut, and he promptly gives up a base hit to Yandy Diaz. And then he promptly gives up a double to Richie Palacios. And then he promptly gives up an RBI single. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh my God, this is going to be a debut to remember, but for all the wrong reasons. And to Christian Scott's credit, he battles that slumping Randy Arozarena, but still battles him, strikes him out, and then gets a monstrous double play against Harold Ramirez. And you take that deep breath and you say, okay, it's a 1-1 game. Because remember, the Mets actually scored a run in the top of the first inning, which they kind of made it a trend in this series. The Mets have been a lot better scoring early. The problem is they're not scoring late. And then Christian Scott goes to work. And as the kids like to say, he was shoving. He shoved. He pounded the strike zone. We saw that sweeper that he has. We saw the command that he has. We saw the aggressiveness that he has. He goes 1-2-3 second, 1-2-3 third, 1-2-3 fourth, gets through the 5th inning after, guess what? the Mets gave up a stolen base, partially on him and then partially on Nito, who threw the ball in the center field. He gets through the 6th inning, including a really tough 9-pitch at-bat. That's what I thought was really impressive. He's 1 pitch away from getting through the 6th inning with a very low pitch count. And Isaac Paradis gives him that long at-bat. And he loses the battle. He gives up a walk. And I was scared for a second in that moment, 1-1, a Rosarena coming up, that at-bat could be the thing that derails his start. And he promptly gets a Rosarena out. Mendoza lets him start the 7th inning. How about that? Lets him start the 7th inning in his major league debut. How many times was he pitching into the 7th inning in AAA? They were handling him with care in AAA. But here, Carlos Mendoza says, screw it, you're a major leaguer. Keep going. Gets the first 2 outs in the 7th, unfortunately gives up a base hit. And then luckily Reed Garrett, after giving up a stolen base, gets through it. The problem with Scott's brilliance was the Met offense did nothing. Kind of like the holy trinity of Met failures that we referred to in that email, where the Mets get an early run, and after that, they do absolutely nothing. And they can't help out the kid in Christian Scott by giving him a couple of runs and possibly giving him a chance to win in his major league debut. Pete Alonzo did nothing in this game, struck out twice. I thought maybe being intentionally walked. Ron Darling even said, it gives him confidence. It's good to – no, it wasn't Ron Darling because this game was on Fox. So I think it was Adam Wainwright. Our buddy, Wayno. What everybody think of Wainwright's performance, by the way? There were parts of me that said he's not bad. I don't hate him. But then there were parts of me that reminded myself that he's Adam Wainwright and he can go F himself. So I was a little mixed, a little back and forth. But the Met bats did nothing. J.D. Martinez, 8th inning, 2-on, 2-out, big spot, grounds out. And I thought off the bat that was going to get through for a base hit. Unfortunately, Adam Ottavino finally had a bad day. Kind of came out of nowhere because he struck out Jose Siri on 3 pitches and he looked dominant. But then he gives up a base hit, gives up a walk, infield hit. What really killed in that 8th inning of a 1-1 game was how Francisco Lindor made this all-world defensive play. Bases loaded, 1 out, ground ball in the hole off the bat of a Rosarena, does the jump throw home, nails the runner at the plate. Just this sparkling play. But sometimes when there are less than 2 outs and you get that big out, it's that next at-bat that ends up killing you. And in the most brutal Median way, Adam Ottavino and Austin Shenton get into this battle where Shenton is fouling pitch after pitch after pitch off. And every time he fouled one off, I felt worse and worse and worse until he effing walked him. And that one run, you knew it. We all knew that run was going to be the difference. Then Sean Reed Foley comes in and walks another run in. And the Met bats do nothing in the 9th inning. DJ Stewart grounds out as the tying run at the plate. Pinch hitting for Tomas Nido. And I went to bed Saturday night disappointed. Back-to-back losses to Tampa Bay. Frustrated by the lack of offense. But I also did think to myself, wow, this is the first time in a long time we saw a young, true starting pitching prospect come up in an anticipated major league debut. I can't say highly anticipated, but anticipated debut, maybe highly anticipated for us as diehards. And he went out, man, and had us dreaming. Because not just this year, and look, I'm an in-the-moment kind of guy. I'm 40 years old. I always think going into a season, you never know. So I am not giving up on 2024. I'm not telling you this season is all about next year, but there are going to be moments where you think about the future. And certainly when a young player makes his major league debut, it's okay to think about the future. And Christian Scott gives us hope because the Mets have not had legitimate starting pitching prospects in a long time. Now, they've had guys come up and give you some decent moments. David Peterson's had a lot of downs, some ups. Tyler McGill has had mostly downs, a couple of ups. Jose Budo has certainly been giving us hope recently, but the Mets haven't had like a legitimate top 100 pitching prospect come up for his major league debut since Steven Matz, since the Syndergaard Matz debuts of 2015, since before that with Harvey and DeGrom and Zach Wheeler. That's kind of crazy to think about, but they really haven't. So to see Christian Scott come up and look as tough as he looked and ballsy as he looked and have the stuff that he had was very, very encouraging. Now, I don't want this to become a season in which the Mets are losing, they're not in the playoffs, and we're just excited about seeing some young pieces. Like, I want to be excited about seeing some young pieces, but I want both. So that's why Saturday night kind of gave you that mixed emotion, because they should have won the game. They were 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Nobody hit other than Starling Marte getting the RBI single in the first inning. Nobody. I'm not even mad at Ottavino because Otto has been so good this season. And even the walk, as frustrating as it was, came in at bat in which a guy was just battling him. Wait, it's not like Ottavino walked the guy on 5 pitches. So it was more frustration at the offense and obviously excitement with what we saw from Christian Scott. As far as Friday's game was concerned, look, when you get a starting pitcher, go 2 2/3 innings, give up 10 hits and 8 runs, the odds are you're not going to win. Now, the Mets showed some fight. They rallied in that 5th inning. And again, it ended with runner on second, big time spot for J.D. Martinez. He came up small. And he's another guy we got to start, I'd say, needling a little bit. You know, Jeff McNeil, ring the alarm bells of concern. Pete Alonzo, massive slump. But, I mean, J.D. Martinez has done next to nothing. If we're going to be honest around here. He has 1 RBI. Can J.D. Martinez wake up and be that fierce bat that we hoped he can be? He hasn't been awful, but he has made 0 impact on this lineup. And they need that impact from J.D. Martinez. But Friday sucked, man. It sucked because after Brandon Nimmo doubled and Starling Marte came up, I'm thinking to myself, here we go again. Maybe we're going to get ourselves a great comeback. We did not get the great comeback. Let's get to some more of your emails, the ricob@gmail.com. Fred Solomon writes, I don't want to kill Edwin Diaz for Sunday's game. That's squarely on the offense, especially Alonzo. But can you waste a pitch to a free swinger like Randy Arozarena? You didn't trust your fastball anyway. Why groove one with 2 strikes? Look, I think Edwin said it best. He just didn't have the command of his slider. He let it hang, and we all saw what happened. Arozarena is a good ball player who's off to a bad start. He fits that whole it's early thing. He's hitting 140. He's going to get hot. Now, look, maybe he's going to have a downer season because you put yourself in such a hole when you're sitting there on May 5th with a 140 batting average, but he's dangerous. And he's one of those guys where my thought was let him get hot when we leave town. Unfortunately, he may have gotten hot as we were leaving town by hitting that home run. Casey writes, guys, this was like watching a Little League team all weekend. Outside of Christian Scott, this was an embarrassing brand of baseball. I think the Mets staff just walked the guy in the second period of the Rangers-Canes game, and he promptly stole second and third. Yes, that did happen. There are losses, and then there's shit like this when you lose all faith in the club. 9 walks and 7 stolen bases is one of the most pathetic team pitching lines you'll ever see. This is unacceptable stuff from a Major League Baseball team, and it's all avoidable. That's what makes it so disheartening and maddening. Also, would it kill Pete Alonzo to get a base hit? Just 1 maybe. I love Pete, and I want him here his entire career, but this is not how to get a mega contract. He's been beyond dreadful, and he's just a microcosm of this whole team refusing to get a big hit. All those good feelings from our hot streak are completely gone. 2 under and swept by a team who couldn't get a win against the damn White Sox. Embarrassing. Yeah, this is a bad team. Like, let's not get this confused. This is maybe bad's too strong. This is a mediocre Tampa Bay team. And when you think about what's happened to the Mets since winning those games in LA, they have lost or split every series, and all the teams they're doing it against outside of Chicago are not good. They lost 2 out of 3 to a sub 500 San Francisco Giant team. They lost 2 out of 3 to a sub 500 St. Louis Cardinal team. Now they lose 2 out of 3 to a sub 500 Tampa Bay Ray team. In fact, the only team they didn't lose a series to during this stretch was the above 500 Chicago team that they split against. So their struggles recently coming out of the 2 wins against LA have all come against kind of crappy baseball teams.
Yeah, but didn't we walk into this season, and maybe it was just me, but I walked into the season thinking that the Mets were going to be a mediocre baseball team. So there was going to be this sort of play at times. You're going to, listen, you're playing mediocre teams. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I understand this is not a great series. They got swept. We see some minor positives. There's a lot of negatives on this, but like that's what happens with a mediocre team. We're not great, but we're also not terrible.
Yeah. I mean, there comes a time during a baseball season where you say, okay, I think I know what this team is. It's no longer early. Are we at the point at 16 and 18 to say this is who they are? They're going to be an up and down team. They're a 500 team. Maybe. I mean, maybe that's where we're heading, that's just the kind of team that they are. I think what gives me hope that they're better than that is not my pig-headedness of remaining loyal to what I thought before the season, but that this offense, which ultimately, if you ask most Met fans, hey, what are you most frustrated about right now during this recent struggle? It would be the offense. The bullpen's had its moments, but the bullpen is still a strength. The pitching staff's had its bad moments, but look, the starting pitching for the most part has still been pretty damn good. Outside of a couple of bad, for the most part, the starting pitching has pitched better than we could have imagined. So the real kind of rip of this team would be the offense. Well, let's get specific about this offense. Brandon Nimmo is starting to wake up, but he's basically been hitting .210 the entire season. We all think he's better than that. Francisco Lindor is starting to get hot, but despite us being angry at Pete Alonzo's slump, I think we all think he's better than the way he's performed. Some of you may think Jeff McNeil is going to turn it around. Obviously, I'm not as confident about that right now. JD Martinez, we just talked about. There's more room with this offense to see and look at them and say, they're going to be better. At least that's kind of the hope I have moving forward. Like, this offense should be better than the way it's performed. Because a lot of the guys, one guy I wouldn't have that confidence about, unfortunately, is Jeff McNeil. Because the sample size goes back a long time now. A long time. I mean, that contract, which when they gave it to him, I loved it. It felt like a steal. It felt like a bargain. He has not lived up to that contract. And it didn't take much to live up to the contract because it wasn't a big money deal. It wasn't anything crazy. But you look at his performance since he got that contract going into last year. He was terrible last year. He's been terrible this year. But I do have hope that Nimmo, Lindor, Alonzo, JD, they'll all be a lot better. Can I give you another positive? Because sometimes you need them, or otherwise you'll be way too depressed. The other positive is Brett Baty. Brett Baty, whose defense has been, for the most part, excuse me, I just dropped my microphone, whose defense has mostly been awesome this season. I mean, he has been shockingly good defensively at third base. Goes out on Friday night, and it's 2 home runs. I mean, that was damn impressive, including one off Jason Adam, who's a pretty tough reliever. So Brett Baty at least showing us a little bit of a pulse. Got on Baty, after slumping for a while, ever since he had that hamstring injury, giving us a little bit of something with the pop, especially on Friday, hitting the 2 home runs. That's the positive. But the overall negative is we're sitting here 2 games under 500. And I hate to ask a question that I asked at 0-5, and I asked it on the fan. I'm not sure if I asked it here at the Rico, but I'll ask everybody listening right now, do we see 500 again? We're 2 games under. We've got 3 games in St. Louis against another mediocre team in the Cardinals. And then the schedule gets very tricky. 3 games against Atlanta, 4 games against Philly, 2 of them at City, 2 of them in Philadelphia. Those 7 games right now, staring at those 7 games, could be a very key part of this season. In terms of, you can't go out there and lose 6 out of 7. You can't go out there and even lose 5 out of 7. You got to go out there and at least win a couple of games. So we'll see how they do in St. Louis. But very disappointing. A very disappointing sweep at the hands of the Tampa Bay Rays. There were a lot of angry emails. We will get to more of them with a midweek Rico coming up in a couple of days. So we will get to hear from the angry Met fan. And I promise you, as this series starts with St. Louis, we will give you 2 Ricos throughout the week. We'll give you your typical series ending Rico, and we'll even give you one in between to kind of set up where we are with this franchise and with this team as they face a very difficult stretch of losing, including being swept by Tampa Bay. You can email us anytime, even if you're angry at me, thericob@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voicemail. The number to call us is 725-222-8699. There you go. I think I got that right. 725-222-8699. Thank you very much for listening, downloading, subscribing to Rico Borgna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Borgna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times. We hope you enjoyed this